You like my phone? My husband, he bought it. You like my car? My husband, he bought it. My husband, he bought it. My husband, he bought it. I'm spoiled and rotten. My husband, he bought it.
This woman reminds me so much of a woman that I knew growing up. I'm going to tell you a story. This is a true story. This woman, I knew her through my family. She had married a good man. They lived in a nice house in the suburbs. They had two beautiful daughters, but their marriage was doomed from the very first moment that she noticed that one of her female friends had more than she did. Not more children, not more freedom, not more passy to love. I mean, more stuff. Her friend's husband was more successful in the conventional sense of the word than her husband was, and so was able to afford more things. Well, she couldn't have her friend being better off than she was, and so she demanded more from her husband, who was a good man, who wanted to provide, who wanted to make her happy. And so he went to his work and said, hey, I'd like to take on some additional responsibilities because I'm trying to earn some more money. And so he got something of a promotion, started working longer hours, and bought her a bunch more stuff. But of course, this promotion meant that he could spend less time at home with her. And so she began to feel neglected, which is at least what she told him after she got caught having an affair. So where did all of this go wrong? At what point in the relationship could this disaster have been averted? Questions relating to real stories, real people just like this one, is exactly the format of my paid course, which you can check out here if you want to test your knowledge of female psychology. But if you think that the right question to ask is, where in the relationship did this go wrong? When could he have averted disaster? Then you're still lost. You're asking the wrong question. He never should have married this woman in the first place. This relationship was doomed to fail because her model for happiness was doomed to fail. And he would have known that if he'd done his due diligence. She was a woman whose satisfaction and happiness in life was based on comparison. And spoiler alert, women whose happiness is based on comparison are never happy. This is how you can test a woman. You've probably done this before. You've asked a woman on a first date, so what do you want in the future? Like, where are you going in your life? What do you want, your world to look like in 5-10 years? What are you shooting for? Now, sometimes you might get a woman who answers, I don't know. And you think, oh, she hasn't figured that out yet. But no, let me translate from womanese to English for a moment. When you ask a woman, what do you want? What do you want out of life? What's going to make you happy? And she answers, I don't know. What she really means is more. That's what she wants. More. She doesn't answer the question because she has no idea about herself. She has no self-awareness. She has no goals that she's shooting for that based on her intrinsic happiness. She says, I don't know, because nothing yet has made her happy. She doesn't know when she's going to be satisfied. So she just wants more, more, more. Women like that are like a black hole, and many men have pushed their masculinity to the absolute brink, trying to provide, trying to give more to her, sacrificing more and more of their own happiness for her sake, only to find that this black hole can never be filled. You can never satisfy a woman who always wants more. She's just going to chew you up and spit you out. What you want is for a woman to answer that question. So what do you want out of life? With an actual specific tangible answer, something that demonstrates that she knows who she is, where she's going, what's going to make her happy. It's a good sign if she says, oh, well, I know I love kids, so I definitely want a family, and I know I love swimming, so I want to live, near the beach, and this makes me happy, and I enjoy doing this, so I'm going to make my life, like this, etc., etc. Whatever it is, so long as she actually has some answer that demonstrates she has some self-awareness. Oh, I've discovered things that I enjoy, and so I'm moving my life in that direction. Then you're good. She's a real person. She has self-awareness, and more importantly, she's shown self-responsibility. This is a frustratingly rare characteristic in modern women, but it's absolutely essential if you want to be happy inside a relationship. A woman who has understood that it is her responsibility to figure out what makes her happy in life and then to go and achieve it. And that includes what kind of a man she's looking to date. I know some men in the manosphere get freaked out when it's like a woman has, standards, or she has an idea about what she's looking for. Like, oh, look, women just want the world. I'm telling you, don't buy into that. If a woman knows what she wants, that's a good thing. Is she looking for a man who's smart or a man who's funny? Is she looking for a man who's ambitious or a man who's chilled out? Is she looking for a man who works a blue-collar job or a man who works at a desk? Whether women see working class or white-collar men as more or less masculine is actually the topic of my latest Patreon video. You can check that out there if you're curious. But regardless of which one she chooses, the fact that she's actually been able to identify things that she enjoys actually means that it's possible for her to achieve happiness in the future. Dating a woman who doesn't know what she wants because nothing in her life has ever made her satisfied before is the biggest red flag. Why do you think that you're going to be able to fill that hole? Why do you think you're going to succeed when she hasn't been able to? Here's a secret nobody's told you yet. Some women are easier to please than others. Women who take responsibility for their own happiness are much more likely to be happy. I don't know what men are thinking dating women like this. Like maybe their male ego gets in the way, like, oh, this miserable woman who nobody's ever been good enough. I'm going to prove how big a man I am, but I'm going to be the one to finally make her happy. And then all this extra glory for me. Oh, fuck off with that. Whatever weird ego trip you're on, cut it out. If she doesn't know what's going to make her happy, keep a wide distance. Find a woman who's easily satisfied. Now, obviously, you don't want a woman who's like too rigid in her ideas because that's too masculine. Like if she's not compromising on what she wants, then there's really no point to you being in a relationship with her. There's no room for your own masculinity. There's no room for your leadership. But my point is that women who are excessively feminine and have no direction, no idea where they're going in life, they're not better. Because I promise you this, that emptiness that you sense inside her of not having any direction, any clue, any self-awareness, that's not going to exist for a long time in a vacuum. Women hate that. That empty space frightens them. They're going to fill it up. The void is frightening. It makes her feel unsafe, and she wants to feel safe. She wants to feel happy, but happiness is hard. It requires self-awareness. It requires self-responsibility. Truly, happiness is an emotion that is reserved only for high-quality women. Very few individuals will ever truly experience happiness. But if a woman isn't capable of happiness, that doesn't mean that she doesn't need to feel psychologically safe. And you know what can substitute for happiness to give a woman a temporary feeling of safety? Superiority. Let me tell you that superiority and happiness are very different things. True happiness is not based on comparison, right? Like think about it. When you're sitting alone in nature, you're enjoying yourself simply because it's fun and pleasurable to you. You like sitting by the river, you like fishing, you like contemplating the sunlight, the wind, the trees. You're not sitting there thinking, oh, I'm having a good time because I'm so much better at contemplating nature than my neighbor down the street. It's not comparison that is the source of your happiness in that moment. When you're playing music and you're listening to your favorite song, you're feeling happy because you love the music. You love the way that it makes you feel, the emotions it generates inside you. You're not happy based on comparison thinking, oh, I'm so much better at listening to this song than my brother-in-law is. When your girlfriend makes a joke and makes you laugh and you're like spontaneously enjoying your company, that's true happiness. You're not thinking, I'm so glad that my girlfriend is funnier than other people's girlfriends. That's why I'm feeling so good right now. When you're happy, it's because life is good. Things are just flowing. They're fun. You have a feeling of internal pride that's not at all based on comparison, but just based on the fact that you're a human being, you live in this universe, and you've successfully identified things that make you happy, and now you're living your life to have a bunch of those things. That's cool. That's awesome. What a great accomplishment. Good for you. But there's a reason you don't see a bunch of men and women like one-upping each other, just being like, I am happier than you, so suck it. It's because that would be fucking weird. You don't use happiness as a basis of comparison because happiness is beautiful. Happiness is sacred. It's something that relates to you as an individual. It's an independent accomplishment. The things that we do, bitch and complain and compare ourselves to other people are not nearly as special as happiness. They're more superficial. But credit where credit is due. When you feel superior to another person, I'll admit, it does give you a temporary feeling of safety. Yes, I'm good, I'm safe, because I can see there are a bunch of people below me. So me, at the top of this pyramid or wherever I am on the ladder, I'm good, I'm safe. Let me tell you that it is very fleeting. It brings no inner peace. What's more, it actually breeds paranoia and jealousy. A sense of superiority is never going to be a permanent state. How could it be? There's always going to be someone else to compare yourself to. So let's say you're dating a girl and she's really pretty and she's got herself all dressed up for the night, and you take her out to a restaurant with a bunch of your friends and their girlfriends, and you notice she's having a really good time. She seems really happy. Now, what you might not realize is the fact that she's feeling happy because she has looked at all the other girls at the table and decided that she's the prettiest, that she looks the best. And so she's feeling superior, and that brings about her sense of safety. Okay, all well and good for the first 20 minutes, you might think. Who cares, as long as she's in a good mood. But what if one of your friends arrives late and his girlfriend is an absolute knockout, and then suddenly your girlfriend feels really insecure and her mood just sours? At that moment, moment, don't you wish you had a girlfriend who felt safe because she was happy, as opposed to a girlfriend who felt safe because she felt superior? It's an ugly, ugly trait, and women who need to feel superior to others to feel good about themselves are such a disaster to date. I hate to break it to you guys who have successfully attracted really good-looking girlfriends, because you probably feel like you're on top of the world. Let me tell you that the positive mood that your girlfriend has, if it's based on her appearance and her comparison to other people, her good mood is not going to last. Her happiness is not going to last because it's not true happiness. What's more, for women, they fade pretty fast. She's got decades to live on this earth, and she's only going to look good for a couple of those decades. I don't say this to be judgmental. We can all be a bit vain sometimes, and we can probably understand that if we were women at the top of the dating market, we'd probably spend a couple of years reveling in our power, reveling in our beauty. That's understandable. But the point is that unless she's doing the hard work to actually discover some depth to herself, to develop some character, to find a source of happiness that's not based on comparison, I'm telling you, she's destined to misery. And these women who get into their 30s and 40s and spend all their time pining for their glory years are such a misery to be around. It's actually quite a natural transition for women after they have children to start to base their self-esteem less on who they are and how pretty they are, and more on how good a parent they are, how well adjusted their children are developing. It's a kind of natural progress for femininity. But this whole paradigm of comparing yourself to others as a source of happiness is even worse than I've presented so far, because not only is it temporary and fleeting, but it also infects your mind with a very specific way of thinking that's absolutely toxic. The big difference between happiness and superiority is that happiness is internally referenced, whereas superiority means that you're always focusing externally, looking outwards, comparing yourself constantly. And in a world where there's always going to be somebody better than you, that is just a recipe for misery. The more time that she spends focusing outwards, comparing herself to other people, the more it reinforces those neurological pathways. It becomes a pattern, it becomes a personality trait, and then suddenly she can't help but compare herself to others. She's just so used to it. And at that point, the chance of her actually returning to sanity and trying to find happiness inside herself, it's impossible. She's too far gone. The momentum towards comparison, I actually think, is probably biologically ingrained inside us. There's a little bit of a hierarchy, sexual mating strategies, competition going on inside both men and women. And so it requires a certain amount of self-awareness and character to actively fight against that. Otherwise, you could spiral before you know it. Like, it just starts with a few, innocent seeming kind of comparisons. Oh, that woman, she's thinner than me. Or, oh, she seems to have more expensive jewelry. Or, I think her boyfriend is taller than my boyfriend. And then before you know it, all she can think about is other people and where she exists in relation to them. You can't date a woman like that. Happiness is her fate. You will become miserable trying to fix things for her. And I used to think that this inclination towards comparison wasn't gendered, that it affects men and women differently. But I've actually changed my mind on this. And the reason is because of social media. Now, I don't have any data to necessarily back up what I'm about to say, but this is just my feeling, is that social media has seemed to have infected the minds of women at a much greater degree than it does for men, which means that I think they're more inclined to comparison and that need to feel superior. Because what is social media other than just the very careful curation of your life to try and present this very successful image? And women love it. I can't personally think of anything more boring than just scrolling through Instagram looking at other people's lives, but women seem absolutely addicted to it. It must be because social media has just hacked into this weakness inside female psychology, which they just absolutely need to know where they exist in comparison to other women, and so they obsess over it. It's very sad. Now, maybe there are some men out there who are thinking, yeah, I'm not really happy. I base my sense of safety on superiority too. I need some help with that. I recognize it's not masculine. If you need some advice, just hit me up here. I'll help you out. But my main takeaway from this video is that when you're dating a new woman, you need to understand where her sense of safety comes from. Is she happy, or does she rely on feeling superior? Does she spend her free time doing activities that bring her joy, or does she obsess over the number of followers that she has? And I don't mean to sound judgmental. I actually have compassion for these women. I think they're very lost. So my compassion is real, but my compassion for these women doesn't mean that I don't have compassion for men. And men, I want you to be happy inside your long-term relationships. And I'm telling you, those kinds of women are disasters. You need to avoid them. Please, for your own sake, do not try and save a woman who has sacrificed her own happiness at the altar of comparison.